Central Elementary School. You've entrusted us your vision. Building your dreams would be our mission.
Happy day, grade 6! How are you today? I hope you're fine and safe. We are now on our week 6 in our science lesson for the second grading period. 2 more weeks to go and we are done with our quarter 2 in our lesson for school year 2020-2021. Are you excited to learn our lesson for this week? But before that, we will sing first the ecosystem song. Here you go.
Plants and animals survive, need each other. A group of organisms in their environments, an ecosystem like a tide pool, desert or Amazon rainforest. Both big and small, yet they're still all ecosystems, organisms, and environment. And communities on populations of all species in a particular area together living. While an ecosystem has the soil, water, sun, community is biotic, only living component in what's a biome. They're based on climate, a group of ecosystems like rainforests or tundras. The energy flows through ecosystems. Stars as light from the sun. These double existences laws for ecosystems to survive. Need energy, constant supply. Energy begins as sunlight transfer through organisms. Some lost the seed with each time. What happens to matter? Well, long as making its way through. The matter is recycled, each atom is reused. Each time assembled into new chemical structures. Recycled from one organism onto another. Balance required for all things survival, like the food chain, nitrogen, water, carbon, and oxygen. These cycles vital, so organisms keep living. So let's be aware not to impair these natural ecosystems on the planet. Living organisms are one of 3 different kinds. Producers make their own food process using sunlight. Consumers like us humans are food we cannot make. Decomposers like fungi feed on waste and what's a biome. They're based on climate, a group of ecosystems like rainforests or tundras. The energy flows through ecosystems. Stars as light from the sun. These double existences laws for ecosystems to survive. Need energy, constant supply. Energy begins as sunlight transfer through organisms. Some lost the seed with each time.
What will we do for this week? Take note of this. We will check first your second summative test. Your summative test about the characteristics of vertebrate animals. And after checking your summative test, then we will check your assessment in the characteristic of the invertebrate animals that you took last week. And then, we will have our third summative test about the characteristics of the invertebrate animals. Pagkahuman na to og summative test, we will discuss your lesson in Module 6. Again, we will discuss your Week 6 lesson about the ecosystem, the tropical rainforest, the coral reefs, and the mangroves swamps. Dili maglibog ha? Medyo heavy po ang atong ubrahon this week. But then, you are now guided what to do for this week para dili na ka maglibog. Get it? Very good. Okay? This time, please get your science notebook. I hope you have your copy about your answers in your second summative test and your assessment in your invertebrate animals last week. Now, we will check those later. Please get your notebook now. Okay, let us now check your second summative test on the characteristics of the vertebrate animals. Number 1. What are vertebrate animals? A. Animals without backbone. B. Vertebrate animals include birds, cats, dogs, cows, lizards, frogs, and humans. C. Vertebrate groups are fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Or letter D. All these are correct. What's your answer? Now, we have two answers for this item. The first one is letter B. Vertebrate animals are birds, cats, dogs, cows, lizards, frogs, and human. We have also vertebrate animals or vertebrate group are fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Kung letter B mong answer, check. Kung letter C mong answer, check. Pero kung B and C, check po. Okay? Good. Number 2. Which of the following are the class or classes of vertebrate animals? 1. Mammals. 2. Birds. 3. Reptiles. 4. Amphibians. 5. Fish. Letter A. 1 and 2 only. B. 1, 2, 3. C. 3, 5. Letter D. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What's the correct answer? The correct answer is letter D. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next, for item 3, use the table below. Which group of animals is composed of the amphibians? A. Group 1, B. Group 2, C. Group 3, or letter D. Group 4. What's the correct answer? The correct answer is letter B. Group 2. We have the frog, the salamander, and the toad are amphibians. Next, number 4. For item 4, refer to this chart. Okay, we have here group 1, or the distinct structures are scales, gills, and fins, and the movement is swim. Number 2 here, group 2, the moist skin, gills, lungs, and can lip mostly. No, magkabak-ambak ra. Number 3 here, group 3, dry scaly skin, lungs, and then gakamang, the crow. Number 4, may feathers, may wings, and then can fly. Most of them can fly. And then, number 5, may hair, may mammary gland, can walk mostly. Ang uban makalupad, ang uban makalangoy. Before you answer item number 4, you have to identify first what group of vertebrate animals are indicated here. You have to analyze carefully. You are not given directly of the group of the animals, the name of the group of the animals, but you are the one to identify that particular group. No, you have to analyze. O group 1, unsa man ang group 1, group 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's have number 4. Vertebrates are classified into 5 subgroups as shown in the chart. To which group do bats and doves belong? Okay, of course, bats and doves are two different types of vertebrate animals. Bats are correct mammals and doves are birds. Correct. So diin ka diri ang bat mabilong. Diin ka diri sa grupo nga ang doves mabilong. Oh, letter A. They belong to group 4. Duha jud sila, group 4 sila, may feathers sila, makalupad. Letter B, they belong to group 5. Diri sila, may hair silang duha, and then makalupad, makalangoy. Letter C, bats belong to group 4, while doves belong to group 5. D, bats belong to group 5, while doves belong to group 4. Okay, let us identify first what is the name of this group of vertebrate animals. Group 1. Unsa kahani ang group 1? Yes, group 1 belongs to fish. Yes, because of the gills. Fish raman ang may gills, right? Ang may hasang ba makaginhawa sa tubig. Group 2, moist skin, danlugon nga skin, may gills food sila, and then may lungs. Yes, these are amphibians. Actually, kining gills sa amphibian, sa frog nino, kanang mga tadpole pa lang ang frog. They have their gills, but the gills of the frog will eventually disappear as the frog becomes adult. Number 3, dry scaly skin and lungs. They breathe through lungs and then they crawl. These are group of reptiles. Feathers, may wings, and most can fly. Yes, birds. Di ba may birds nga dili mo lupad just like ostrich kay tungod sa kadakoon niya. Group 5, may hair, may mammary gland. Yes, mammals. Laban na to nga mammals ga lakat pero naay ga lupad just like the bat, and may uban ka swim just like dolphin. Now, so again, bats belong to, yes, group 5, dara. And then wild doves belong to, yes, group 4. Kay ang group 4, birds. The correct answer for number 4 is D. Next, number 5. Which group list of animals are mammals? A. Eagle, Maya, owl, and toad. B. Dolphin, monkey, goat, pig. C. Salamander, goat, pig, frog. D. Snake, turtle, lizard, and crocodile. The correct answer is letter B. Dolphin, monkey, goat, and pig. Let's have number 6. For item number 6, study some physical characteristics of 3 animals below. Okay, given the characteristics of the animals, analyze what type of vertebrate animals is being described. Number 1, may fur, walay wings, pero may ang yang feet niya o yang tiil niya, hooves. 2, we have may fur siya, wala siya wings, and ang iyahang tiil paws with claws. And then number 3, may hair siya, may wings siya, ang iyahang feet na ay finger with claws. So what type of vertebrate animal is this? Yes, that's mammals. Saman nga mga animals ang may hooves? Yes, kanang mga horse. And then, number 2, fur, paws with claws. Mga cat, correct? Tiger. And then we have my hair, my wings, and then ang finger niya, my claws, paws. Oh, that's bat. So that's why these 3 animals belong to mammals. Number 7. For item number 7, refer to the animals inside the box. Which animals are mammals? A. Frog and salamander. They have moist skin and can live both on land and in water. B. Duck and penguin. They can live on land and water. C. Bear and cat. They have fur that prevent loss of the body heat. Or letter D. Chicken and duck. They are covered with feathers. What's the correct answer for number 7? It's, yes, that's bear and cat because they have fur that prevent the loss of body heat. Next, number 8. Which of the following belongs to amphibians? A. Salamander, B. Toad, C. Frog, or letter D. All these are correct. The correct answer is letter D. All these are correct. Refer to the vertebrate animals below to answer question number 9. So number 9, which among the animals are mammals? A. 1 and 4, B. 2 and 3, C. 2 and 4, or letter D. 5 and 6. What's the correct answer? Yes, the correct answer is 5 and 6. O, unsang ginagamit sa tagak para mukuha og pagkaon? Yes, of course, their beak, daro, yung sungo, di ba? And of course, tabang pod ang iyahang feet. Usahay ang feet ang ginagamit para pugngan ang isda or kuptan pod ang isda, right? Kay may claws man na iyang feet. So the correct answer is letter B, 1 and 3. Number 1, we have long, thin legs with webbed feet, yung tiil. And number 3, we have long, pointed, and sharp beak, yung sungo. So, mauning ginagamit niya para mukuha og pagkaon. 21. Birds have beaks that are shaped to suit their food-getting activities. Which of the birds below eats fish? Indra ang kakaon ng isda kaha. Yes, letter C, no? That's the beak of a pelican. Number 22. Which group of vertebrate can be classified as fish? A. Tilapia, milkfish, galonggong, and tulingan. B. Iguana, alligators, shrimp, and whales. C. Alligator, dove, snake, and salamander. Or letter D. Lizard, snakes, turtles, and crocodile. The correct answer is letter A. Tilapia, milkfish, galonggong, and tulingan. Number 23. How will you protect wild animals that live in the forest? A. Kill them. B. Catch and sell them. C. Plant and grow more trees. Letter D. Don't mind them. The correct answer is plant and grow more trees because trees are habitat of our wild animals. Number 24. How will you show love and concern to pet animals? A. Give them food. B. Treat them well. C. Kick them anytime. Or letter D. Both A and B. Yes, letter D. Give them food and you have to treat them well. And number 25. Which special characteristics allow the frog to escape from its enemies? Letter A. 1 and 2. B. 1 and 3. C. 1 and 4. Or letter D. 2 and 4. Unsa na po'y ginagamit sa frog para mapalayo sa iyahang mga kontra? Yes, letter D. Ang iyahang long hind legs. And we have number 4, the slimy skin. No? So kung madakpan man siya, dali na po siya makabuhi kay danog siya. Di po siya madadali og dakop kay kusog siya kaayo mo lukso because of its long hind legs. Now, for your part 2, no, you have to prepare your compilation or album of pictures of the vertebrate animals. And I hope everybody has done their outputs already. But for those nga wala, I'll give you time to submit. Pwede pa kakasubmit for your output for last week na performance task. So what's your score in our 25-item test? Okay? I know you've got a very good score on our summative test last week. Good job, everyone! This time, we will check your assessment last week. Get your notebook again. Ready? This could be found on page 8 of your module. Number 1. The largest group of invertebrate is the arthropod group. What do all arthropods have in common? A. They live on land and have an exoskeleton. B. They can fly and have jointed legs. C. They have segmented bodies and jointed legs. Or letter D. They have skeleton and segmented bodies. The correct answer for number 1 is letter D. They have skeleton and segmented bodies. Number 2. Why do some mollusks have shells? A. So they can live both on land and water. B. To make it easier to find food. C. This is as a reason why mollusks have shell. D. To protect their soft bodies. The correct answer is letter D. Mollusks have shell because this is their protection of their soft bodies. Number 2. All of the following are hollow-bodied animals except A. Corals, B. Oyster, C. Jellyfish, or letter D. Sea anemones. The correct answer is oyster. Number 4. All invertebrates are animals that A. have hard shells, B. have no backbone, C. have hollow bodies, or letter D. live in the ocean? The correct answer is have no backbone. Number 5. Which of these groups of animals belong to echinoderm? A. Bees, butterfly, and mantis. B. Sand dollar, starfish, and sea urchins. C. Earthworm, leeches, and tapeworm. Or letter D. Spider, ticks, and scorpion. The correct answer is letter B. The sand dollar, starfish, and sea urchins. Number 6. To what subgroup of arthropods do invertebrates with 4 pairs of legs belong? A. Echinoderms, B. Crustaceans, C. Arachnids, or letter D. Insects. The correct answer is C. Arachnids. Next, number 7. They are characterized as marine animals with spiny endoskeleton. They have water vascular system, tube feet, and radial semestry as adult. Which group of invertebrate is being described? A. Mollusks, B. Echinoderms, C. Cnidarians, or letter D. Annelids. The correct answer is echinoderms. Next, number 8. They have no tissue, no organ, and most have no symmetry. A. Sponges, B. Echinoderms, C. Cnidarians, or letter D. Annelids. The correct answer is sponges. Number 9. Which group of invertebrates is divided into segments with a ringed appearance? A. Sponges, B. Echinoderms, C. Cnidarians, or shrubs, small plants, and trees. C. Consists mostly of fungi, insects, worms, and litter from taller trees. D. Has slender trees from a dense platform of vegetation with 60 to 128 feet. The correct answer is, it's letter D. Has slender trees from a dense platform of vegetation with 60 to 129 feet. Number 7. Why is a producer important in an ecosystem? A. It is source of food to the consumers. B. It is an organism that eats plants. C. It breaks down organism into smaller particles. Letter D. It is a series of feeding relationship. The correct answer is, it's letter A. Plant is a source of food to all the consumers. Number 8. Blank results from the interconnected food chains. A. Consumer. B. Producer. C. Food web. Or letter D. Biotic component. The correct answer is food web. Number 9. A reef that stands between the open sea and a lagoon refers to A. Barrier reefs. B. Fringing reefs. C. Next is we have the understory layer. The understory layer is about 59 feet and below and consists of trunks of canopy, trees, and small plants. As you see here, ano ka na gagmay nga mga kahoy na lang, no? Muna siya mga example sa understory layer. Mga 59 feet and below. Hagas yapon. Pero, i-compare nimo sa mga canopy, bubo lang ni sila, no? And of course, mga shrubs. Mga shrubs are part of understory layer. Kana mga labong pud nga mga tanom. Yan. Next is the forest floor. The forest floor is the home of animals. Kung diin, gapuyo ang mga wild animals in which they thrive or they live in a deep shed part of the forest, no, where plant life is thin. Kana mga nigpis na nga part sa forest. This is because this is the only part wherein a small percent of sunlight gets through the thick canopy and understory and reaches the forest floor. Diri gastay ang mga wild nato nga mga animals like mentioned earlier because gamay na lang nga mga nga sunlight, dili na kayo init, no, landong na siya kayo na part sa rainforest. Organisms like fungi, insects, worms, and litter from tall trees and that fall on the forest floor that can be found here. So again, organisms like fungi, insects, worms can be found in the forest floor part of the rainforest. So here are examples of the forest floor. Ayan. Actually, naa sa mga yuta na class, no? Muna siya mga forest floor part of the rainforest. Mga insects na napita. Now, what are producers? Of course, as you see here on screen, plants are producers. Plants provide food for the consumers. They are called producers because they are the one who produce food consumed by consumers. Consumers includes herbivore plant-eating animals. Katong mga animals nga gakaon lang og plants. Herbivore ang tawag na to, ana. Just like carabao, the cow, and the horse. And the gitawag nimo, like snake here, kung ang snake kanon niya si bluebird. The snake will be eaten by the owl. No? And eventually the owl will die and become decomposer and becomes part of the decomposer. Decomposer again will be important na pod for the plants to grow and to produce food. So that is what we call, this is an example of a food chain. So again, food chain starts with a producer, which is plant, and a series of consumers and decomposers. What is food web? So food web is the result from interconnected food chain. So food web is a complex food interrelationship between organisms, as you see here in the illustration. So for example, the corn will be eaten by the grasshopper. The grasshopper will be eaten by the rat. But this grasshopper can be eaten also by frog. Diba? Pwede makaon ang usa ka organism sa usa pa jud ka organism. Frog will be eaten by the python or the snake. Okay? But the frog can be eaten also by the eagle. So there is complex eating relationship between organisms. Now that's food web. Now there are different organisms living in the ecosystem like rainforest which interact with each other. So there are relationships that exist among the organisms, no, in the ecosystem like the tropical rainforest. And this relationship is called symbiosis. No, symbiosis includes predation, mutualism, commensalism, and competition. Symbiosis means living together. No? It is a type of close or long-term biological interaction between biological organisms. Symbiosis includes predation, mutualism, commensalism, competition. What are examples of each of these symbiosis? First is commensalism. What is commensalism? Commensalism is an interaction where organisms live together without harming one another. For example, orchids is attached to the trunk of the tree without harming it. So, as you notice, na mga orchids is always attached to a tree. So, what is the benefit of the orchids when they are attached to the trees? Of course, they can absorb lots of sunlight. And also, dili po siya matapak-tapakan sa uban nga mga organism just like us. No? If they are attached to a high place, just like the trees. But, while the orchids are benefited because of the height and because of the sunlight it gets while it is attached to the trees, the orchids will not cause harm to the trees. Dili siya maka-apekto sa trees. And then also, we have the frog. No? The frog will blend to the plants. So the plants will not be affected while it protects the frog because the frog has the ability to blend its color to its surrounding. So, kung naa siya sa mga leaves sa mga plants, then the frog will not be easily seen by their enemies, just like the snake. So, di siya makaon dali sa iyang enemies, right? Oh, so, naprotektahan niya yung kaugalingon, naka-benefit ang frog. The frog is benefited without harming the plants. No? While nagtungtong ang frog sa plants, it cannot cause harm to the plants. So, that's commensalism. One is benefited while the other organism is not harmed. Another example is the cattle and the egret. While the egret is on the back of the cattle will not be harmed. Instead, the egret will eat the insects stirred up by the cattle, no, when they are grazing. Now, the cattle is not affected while the birds are gaining food. Okay, may mga insects po na gadapilit dira sa likod sa mga cattle. So, ang ubrahon ni egret yan ang kanon. No? So, again, naka-benefit na si egret, but then wala siya nakakosong harm ni cattle. And also, we have the birds. The birds use the trees as their home. But then, the trees is not harmed while the birds are using them as their home. No? Their presence generally does no harm to the trees, but the trees protect the birds with shelter and protection. That's commensalism. Mutualism. No? In mutualism, both organisms benefit in the relationship. For example, the bee, just like here you see here on the screen, the bees or the butterfly and suck nectar from the flower, and the flower reproduces. So ang mutualism na pod, both organisms are benefited, while the bees and the butterfly suck the nectar of the flower, which serve as their food. The butterfly and the bees will transfer the pollen from one flower to another. When that happens, flower reproduces. Managhan pod ang flower because ang pollen from one particular flower to another is transferred, no, wherein that makes them reproduce. Okay, the plant pollinator receives the nectar or the fruit, no, from the plant, and it also collects and transfer pollen in the process. So, when the pollen from one flower to another is being transferred through the bees and the butterfly, the flower reproduces. Managhan ang flower. So, naka-benefit silang duha. And also, the plants and animals. When plants and animals live together, there is mutualism happens. Or, bisa na animals. Because animals give carbon dioxide to the plants, in which the carbon dioxide is used by the plants for photosynthesis. In exchange, the byproduct of the photosynthesis is oxygen, and that oxygen will be used by animals like humans. So there is mutualism happens. Kaya duha jud sila ang naka-benefits. Naka-benefits ang plant, naka-benefits po ang animals. So that's mutualism. Both organisms are benefited in their interaction with one another. Now, competition. Competition is an interaction wherein organisms compete for survival. No? So, gakompetensyahanay sila for food. Just like the grass, the shrubs, no? The flowers and the trees grow together in one area where they compete for food, sunlight, soil, nutrients, and other things needed for survival. No? So, mula na siya nakalain kung daghan kaayog tanom sa usa ka lugar. Of course, they are competing with the food, nutrients, with the water, with the sunlight, no? For survival. site, benefits, while the other species, the host na po ang tawag is harm. So lain ganina sa commensalism nga naka-benefit ang usa ka organism and the other is not harm. But this one is totally different. This one is opposite of commensalism, which is the parasitism. One organism which is harm. So that's the relationship happens in the tropical rainforest. Number 2, discuss interaction between plants and sunlight in a tropical rainforest ecosystem. Okay, the possible answer is the orchid is attached to the branch of the tree without harming it. Now, they live together without harming each other. In a way, while the orchid is attached to the branch of the tree, they get sunlight also at the same time. So this is commensalism. Number 3, what will happen if producers will decrease in a rainforest ecosystem? So the possible answer is, if the producer will decrease, then the consumer will also decrease and die. Because if there is no producer, then there is no food for the consumer to consume. So mga matay na. So again, importante kaayo ang plants because plants do make their own food and we consume plants for food also. Number 4, are the interactions among living things and non-living things important? Why? Yes, it is important. The interaction is important for survival of organisms. Let's have the what I have learned part on page 8 of your module. We will complete the paragraph here on the screen and we will choose our answer inside the box. Okay? Ready? Okay. I learned that correct. The ecosystem is an environment where both living and non-living things exist and interact with one another. The different layers of the rainforest are emergent, canopy, understory, and forest floor? Blank is a series of feeding relationship. Correct. Food chain. While blank is an interconnected food chain. Correct. Food web. Blank is an interaction where organisms live together without harming one another. Commensalism. For example, the orchids are attached to the trunk of the tree without harming it. In blank, both organisms benefit in the relationship. Mutualism. Correct. Blank is a kind of interaction in which one organism kills smaller organisms for food. Predation. Correct. Again, let us all read together the paragraph. Go. I learned that the ecosystem is an environment where both living and non-living things exist and interact with one another. The different layers of the rainforest are emergent, canopy, understory, and forest floor. Food chain is a series of feeding relationships, while food web is an interconnected food chain. Commensalism is an interaction where organisms live together without harming one another. For example, the orchids are attached to the trunk of a tree without harming it. In mutualism, both organisms benefit in their relationship. Predation is a kind of interaction in which one organism kills smaller organisms for food. I can do part of your module. This could be found again on page 8. Now, direction, we have to read the paragraph and answer the questions that will follow. Living things and non-living things interact with each other in a tropical rainforest ecosystem. This interaction enables the survival of living things and affects non-living things. Can you identify the living and non-living things in a tropical forest? Discuss their interaction. So, of course, there are lots of living and non-living things that could be found in the tropical rainforest. For example, the plants. Of course, the plants and carbon dioxide. The plant is a living and carbon dioxide is non-living thing. So plants need carbon dioxide for food making. In return, it releases oxygen during the process of photosynthesis. And of course, animals and oxygen. Animals are living things and oxygen is non-living thing. So animals need oxygen given by plants for respiration. In return, it releases carbon dioxide which will be needed by plants in the process of photosynthesis. So I will not give your additional activity as your assignment anymore because again, as I said, your lesson for this week is quite heavy. So that's why all you have to do is to listen, participate, and please take note of our discussion. Your additional activities could be found on page 9. Now the table below show the different orchids benefited without harming the branch of the tree. Letter A shows predation, the habitat of many animals, especially the marine animals. They are the breeding ground of the marine lives. Coral reefs composed of non-living things such as the water and the sand. And of course, our coral reefs has also living thing components such as the fish, the crustaceans, the mollusks, the cnidarians, the sponges, and the echinoderms. Most of our invertebrate animals are here, no, living in the coral reefs. And of course, our fish, one of our vertebrate animals. Just like in other ecosystem class, in coral reefs, organisms interact with each other, both non-living things and living things. The producers, like the seagrasses, provide food and nutrients to the consumers. And who are these consumers? These consumers include the sea turtles, the crabs, of course, the mantis or dugong, and all other fishes and marine animals. No? So these are the consumers that eat our producers, no, like the seagrasses in our marine ecosystem. Now, there are factors, class, that contribute to the formation of the coral reef, such as the temperature, ang kainiton, the light penetration, the stable salinity, and the water movement. Now, on this, there are different categories of the coral reef, such as the fringing reefs, Now, fringing reefs are reefs that hug the shore of the continents or island. As you see here on the screen, no? Coral reefs that are situated near the continent. And we have also the barrier reefs. Now, what are barrier reefs? Barrier reefs are reefs that stand between the open sea and a lagoon. No? As you see here on the screen, nasa mga tunga-tunga lapit sa dagat. So again, between the open sea, kanang mga laom ng mga parts sa sea, and a lagoon. And then we have, the last one is the coral atoll. The coral atolls are reefs that enclosed in a lagoon, just like what you see here on the screen. These are the different categories of the coral reefs. There are interaction also happens class between the non-living things and the living things in the coral reef, just like the rainforest ecosystem. The first one is commensalism. Can you still remember what is commensalism? Commensalism is an interaction where organisms live together without harming one another, just like the barnacles attached to the skin of the turtles. Examples as you see here on the screen. The barnacles benefited, no? While the barnacles is attached to the skin of the turtles without harming the turtles. But of course, class, kung manamhan na ginis lang kaayo, luoy na pud kaayo si turtle. Pero kung jutay man lang sila, okay pa na, no? So there is commensalism. But then, if kung daghan na gid sila kaayo nga gagatapik dira sa likod sa turtle, I guess it would be unbenefited na pud sa part sa turtles. Kaya of course, bukat na, no? Sa gabal na sa iyahang part sa iyahang shell. And of course, there is also commensalism between the clownfish and the sea anemones. The clownfish both organisms benefited or both organisms benefit in the relationship? Mutualism. For example, the corals receive oxygen from the algae and the algae get protection from them. Blank is a kind of interaction where one organism, the parasites, depend on another organism for food, production, and reproduction. Of course, parasitism. Blank is a kind of interaction in which one organism kills small organisms for food. An example of this is when a big fish eats a small fish. Again, let us all read together. Go! I learned that the coral reefs serve as a breeding ground of marine life. The factors that contribute to the reef formation are light penetration, temperature, stable salinity, and water movement. The fringing reefs, the barrier reefs, and coral atolls are categories of coral reefs. Commensalism is an interaction where organisms live together without harming one another. For example, barnacles attach to the skin of turtles without harming them. In mutualism, both organisms benefit in the relationship. For example, the corals receive oxygen from the algae. The algae get protection from them. Parasitism is a kind of interaction where one organism, the parasite, depends on another organism for food, production, and reproduction. Predation is a kind of interaction in which one organism kills smaller organisms for food. An example of this is when a big fish eats a small fish. We have the what I can do part. This could be found on page 13. We will answer it orally. Living things and non-living things interact with each other in a coral reef ecosystem. Coral reef is composed of non-living components such as water and sand. It serves as breeding place for fish, crustaceans, mollusks, cnidarians, sponges, and echinoderms. Their interactions enables the survival of living things and affects non-living things. Can you identify the living and non-living things in the coral reef ecosystem and discuss their interaction? Okay, we've mentioned this earlier. So these are the living things: the fish, the sponges, the corals, the sea anemones, and worms. The living things include water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and sand. How do they interact with one another? They interact in many ways, including predation, cooperation, competition, and parasitism. The interactions are important for the survival of the organism. Let's have the additional activities. This could be found on page 13. So directions: identify the interaction between the given pair of organisms in column A and its interaction in column B. So again, big fish and small fish, number 1. The correct answer is predation. Correct. Barnacles and turtle. It's commensalism. Worm and fish. Of course, parasitism. Tuna fish and blue marlins. That's competition. Clownfish and sea anemone. That's mutualism. Very good, class. Let us now proceed to your lesson 3 for module 6, particularly the ecosystem, mangrove swamp. Let's have first the what's in part of the module. This could be found on page 14. We will now identify the living things found in the tropical rainforest and the coral reefs. Okay, we will answer it orally. Let's have first the living things in the tropical rainforest. Example, the insects, right? And the trees. Next up is the non-living things. What are the examples of the non-living things found in the tropical rainforest? Correct, it's the soil and stones. Next, let's have the coral reefs. So examples lang. I know we can find lots of living and non-living things in the tropical rainforest and coral reef. What we are asking here for this activity is just a sample, 2 examples of living and non-living things for this ecosystem. Let's have the living things in the And other migratory birds inhabit the mangroves canopy. The fishes class and the crustaceans live underneath the mangrove root system. So, na-benefit ang mga fish nga gagmay because they serve the mangrove roots and branches as their protection while the mangroves is not harmed. So, commensalism siya. Now, next interaction is mutualism. So, what mutualism interaction happens in the swamp ecosystem? For example, mutualism is shown when the animals like the crab like you see here on the screen, and the mollusk help break down the plant litter in the mangroves ecosystem through grazing. So kanang mga plants na naaga palibot sa mangroves, kanon po na sa mga crabs and mga mollusks, no? In which they help this breakdown through grazing, ilan ang paakon. So makabenefit ang mangroves because may mga plants na competition nila, kuwaon sa crab, but at the same time, ang crab naka-benefits po din, nakakuha sila ang pagkaon. Next interaction is, of course, as you see here on the screen, predation. Sa to gani ang predation? What is predation? Yes, when one organism eats other organism raw. Example, the white heron or the tagak eating a fish, no? That clearly shows a predation interaction, no, in this kind of ecosystem. The heron eats the fish raw. Okay? So that's predation. You know what, class? Mangrove swamp ecosystem is very important because they serve as breeding and nesting grounds of the animals. Diri ga pangitlog ang uban nga klase sa mga isda ug diri pud gadako. The mangrove shelter is used as shelter by fishes as breeding and nursing grounds before heading to the open ocean. Samtang gadako ang mga isda, class, diri na sila gastay sa swamp ecosystem or the mangrove swamp ecosystem before sila mo puyo dito sa open sea or sa ocean. Mangroves are also important, no, as habitat of other organisms like the herons. Numerous animal species find protection and abundant food in this environment. So diri gina-prefer sa uban ng mga heron, no, to collect food kasi syempre kabalo sila naa diri ang mga gagmay nga mga isda. So ang uban nga mga heron diri nagapuyo because mas masayunan sila makuha og pagkaon nila kung naa diri sa mangrove swamp. Kay dili man kaayo lawom diri ang tubig, no? So makita na gid nila ang mga isda nga pwede nila makaon. It also acts as natural barrier and flood defense as they defend coastline from flooding and erosion. So ang atuang mga mangroves, class, makatabang pod sa paglisen sa baha or sa pag-prevent sa mga baha o mga soil erosion. Kadtong mga dagko kaayo nga mga waves, no? Ginatabangan niya nga para dili dayon moadto sa mga seashore. So mapungga nila ang mga dagko kaayo nga mga balod. Lastly, class, mangrove is important because this is a source of livelihood of the people living in the coastal area. Diba may mga talaba dira sa mga lower parts sa mga branches of the mangroves? Yan. So sayon kay pagkuha sa mga tao, no, nagapuyo dool sa mga mangrove swamp ecosystem. So ginakuha ni nila for source of living. This time, let's have the what's more part of your module. Let us identify and discuss the interaction between living and non-living things in the mangrove swamp ecosystem. First is the oyster and the mangrove. So what interaction happens between these two organisms? Of course, commensalism. Oyster attached to the roots and branches of the mangroves without harming the mangroves. So there is commensalism interaction in here. Next is the white heron and the water. Of course, commensalism Japan. The heron gets its food from the water, no? Without affecting, of course, without polluting the water, right? How about the crab and the mud? Of course, commensalism. The crab gets food from the mud and it serves as its habitat without affecting the mud. How about the mangrove and the birds? Yes, the bird rely on the mangrove for its habitat and food. The birds aid in the pollination and propagation of the plant. What are the interactions that exist among living and non-living things in the mangrove ecosystem? Commensalism, predation, competition, and mutualism are some of the interactions that exist in this kind of ecosystem. Are these interactions important? Why? Of course, yes, interaction is important for organism survival. Let's have the what I have learned part of the module. This could be found on page 17. Again, let us complete the statement in this part. Let us choose our answer inside the box. I learned that ecosystem is composed mostly of mangrove plants and animals like crustaceans and migratory birds. Mangroves are important because they serve as breeding and nesting grounds of animal species. Blank and blank, a source of livelihood to people living in coastal areas. Okay, natural barrier and food defense, and of course, habitat of organisms and a source of livelihood to people living in coastal areas. In this kind of ecosystem, blank is shown when animals like crabs and mollusks help break down plant litter in the plant ecosystem through grazing. Of course, mutualism. Blank is shown when white heron ate fish. Correct prediction. Let us read all together. I learned that ecosystem is composed mostly of mangrove plants and animals like crustaceans and migratory birds. Mangroves are important because they serve as breeding and nesting grounds of animal species, natural barrier and food defense, habitat of organisms, and source of livelihood of people living in coastal areas. In this kind of ecosystem, mutualism is shown when animals like crabs and mollusks help break down plant litter in a mangrove ecosystem through grazing. Predation is shown when white heron or tagak ate fishes. What I can do part of your module. This could be found on page 17. Okay, directions. Identify the living and non-living things and then add mangrove ecosystem. Then discuss how they interact. Again, directions. Identify the living and non-living things in mangrove ecosystem. para ma-access din mo class ang mga video lessons sa ato ang science and also other subjects, no? Even gani ang mga video lessons sa kinder hasta sa grade 5 kung may mga manghud mo, pwede ra mo pa lantaw diri sa www.ss.info. This is the official website of Escalante Central Elementary School. May mga menu board na dira sa babaw, dira ka mo pili kung diin ka kung unsa nga video ang imuhang lantawon. And also, please be reminded to please tune in to our Radyo Atraca every day for our radio-based instructions. And also, please do watch our TV-based instruction, channel IBC. Okay? But if you missed the episodes, you can watch it at YouTube. Okay? Subscribe DepEd TV on YouTube. Okay? To keep updated for all the video lessons of our TV-based instructions. Okay? If you have questions also class, you can contact me during our offline and online kamustahan that is scheduled every Wednesday 2:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon. Okay? So please do contact me on our scheduled dates and time. In case class na medyo magka-diferensya atong USB, di siya ma-play, yan di po ka-access sa atong website, sa YouTube channel nako, pwede nimo siya malantaw ang mga science video lessons. Okay? The past and present nato nga mga lessons, no? Narada tanan.